I'd like to call the meeting of District 721 to order. Please note that all board members are here except Matt Goldati.
Right now.
Oh, he's coming.
Walking
Okay.
down the sidewalk.
We wait for the pledge? Do it? Okay, let's stand for the pledge. Okay, there's no open forum tonight. Okay, and our next item is recognition of a National Merit Commended Student.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Adams. I'm principal at New Prague High School, and it is my pleasure tonight to be able to introduce to you Lydia Schmitz. Lydia has been awarded a commended student's status through the preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. Only about 34,000 commended students throughout the nation are being recognized for their exceptional academic promise. Commended students place among the top 50,000 scorers of more than 1.5 million students who entered the 2021 competition by taking the 2019 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test, also known as the PSAT. Those being named commended students have demonstrated outstanding potential for their academic success. These students represent a valuable national resource, recognizing their accomplishments as well as the key role their schools play in their academic development is vital to the advancement of educational excellence in our nation. We hope that this recognition will broaden their educational opportunities, encourage them as they continue their pursuit of academic success. And I'd also like to just comment that I had the opportunity to sit in on one of Lydia's classes last year. It was an AP Calculus class. And more than just scoring well on a test, it was very clear that her engagement, her focus, her problem solving, and her ability to process and critically think was really outstanding and stood out. And there's no surprise that she is being awarded this letter of commendation from the National Merit Scholarship Foundation.
Thank you.
Take a picture here. No photobomb it.
Thank you. Congratulations, Lydia.
Tim, how many New Prague students usually end up with?
Oh, we have one a year about.
Congratulations.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And I guess we're supposed to, okay, that should have been the agenda. Now should we do the consent agenda? Motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we'll have the board committee reports. Policy? Yeah, we haven't really met.
We haven't met, but we do review them
Right,
via virtually, or however you want to say it, email. And the ones that we had were just MSBA wording, minor changes, and administration changes. For transportation one was the biggest one, but
right. You? Southwest Metro?
Southwest Metro had their monthly meeting last Tuesday, and at the meeting we had a presentation of our program that helps students that have mental illnesses. It's a program that allows them to continue to go to school but also gives them an opportunity to have therapy during their school day as well. And this program has been very successful. Many students have gone through the program and have been able to go back to their home schools after having the therapy that is given to them in this program. So it was a nice presentation and a very worthwhile program that's available to our students. We had updates of the different programs from the advisors of the programs. And one of the things that's a little bit disconcerting is that between the fact that we have distance learning and we do have the hybrid system, you know, we have kind of a mix of the two types of presentations, our numbers are a bit down. And it's one of those things that I think it's more difficult for students to get involved in our programs that we have at Southwest Metro. I mean, they're not drastically down, but their numbers are down a little bit. So that was something that was a little bit disconcerting. And then we had our regular sharing of reports from the districts. And most districts are, you know, like we are, struggling a little bit, but doing the best that we can and trying to present the best program that we can for the students under the circumstances.
Thank you. How about CPAC?
I'll defer to Tammy. She took my place because I had a double booking that night.
So I attended the CPAC virtual meeting last Tuesday, and it was really good. Amy did a great job just laying out the agenda, but you know, a lot of it, of course, has to do with the whole how are we teaching with the hybrid and the distant learning, and just trying to make the best out of everything, because it's not one child, it's all of our kids. And just working with the parents, that's the biggest thing. Working with the parents right now to help however we can with their kids when they're on the off days has been a real struggle, but everybody is really stepping up to the plate to help that out. Amy talked about making lemonade out of lemons, because kind of how we're feeling right now, but she had a couple great clips that she included in the thing. We weren't able to watch it during the meeting, but she sent it out later. So big thing, dealing with the anxiety. It's not just our kids with special needs, it's all of them. Just there's that whole anxiousness of, are we gonna go back to school? Are we gonna be in distant learning? You know, it's just every week it's questioning. So our kids are feeling it significantly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy, for stepping for me.
No problem.
Okay, community ed?
No,
Okay, wellness?
no,
Early childhood did not meet. Fitness and Aquatic Center, joint powers?
Didn't meet.
Meet, okay. So our first discussion item is a resolution awarding the sale of general obligation school building refunding bonds.
Kelly Smith from Baker Tilly is here again this evening to discuss it. There is a document that was just added in board docs that is a summary of the sale. If you wanted to pull that up, it's in board docs.
Thank you, Sandy. Madam Chair, Superintendent Ditburner, and members of the board, I'm Kelly Smith with Baker Tilly, and happy to be with you here tonight to give you the results of the competitive sale that we held on your 2012 refunding bonds. I was here a month ago, and when you passed the set sale resolution for this sale, and at that time we had estimated that we would see an approximately a 0.86% interest rate on the bonds that were going to be refunded. Today you had great sale results. We had 4 bids that were received by our offices, and the low bid was 0.52. So we were almost 35 basis points lower than we had projected. We had originally estimated savings of about $950,000 over the remaining life of these bonds. those savings increased to $1,046,639 with the award of this sale tonight. And that's, there's 4 years remaining on these bonds, so that's about $262,000 a year in savings. And I always like to emphasize that these savings are not to the school district, but to district taxpayers. So this will be reflected on the levy that you'll be approving in December. We'll be submitting this new bond schedule to the Minnesota Department of Education, and they'll make those adjustments before you approve your final levy. So the low bidder today was Hilltop Securities. Again, I mentioned we had 4 bids. All 4 of the bids were below our projections, so very, very good results for the district. And we're happy to bring this resolution to you tonight to award the sale of these bonds to Hilltop Securities. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions?
Madam Chair, if I could, I was remiss in not talking about your bond rating. You are at a AA3 rating via Moody's. There's 2 main rating agencies that work with school districts in Minnesota, Standard & Poor's and Moody's. In the bond rating world, we hear of AAA rating, that's a prime rating. And then there's a next tier, AA1, AA2, and AA3. So you're in that AA3, which is considered a high investment grade, and that's an excellent rating for a school district of your size in a rural community. So I just want to credit you as a board and your administration for running your finances well, having stability within the district, and maintaining that high rating. That certainly helps whenever you're doing things like this bond sale that you're acting on tonight. So I'd like to thank Sandy especially, who participated in the rating call. It's normally about a 45-minute process as the analyst tries to learn more about the New Prague area schools. And again, commend all of you for maintaining that AA3 rating for your district here. So.
Thank you. Oh, does anyone have any questions?
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to consider the general obligation school building referendum bond series 2020A.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider the following resolution: awarding the sale, determining the form and details, authorizing the execution, delivery, and registration, and providing for the payment of general obligation school building refunding bonds series 2020A. How do you vote on this, Leo?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Dennis, yes. Item passes.
Hey, we're
Thank
done.
you very much. I know
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy will have some documents for signature as well at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next we have approval of the 2019-2020 audit report.
Hoping Nancy Wilsonberg is on. I don't see if, Nancy, are you there? I don't think she's on, so.
It looks
why
like
don't you-
she's on, but it looks like she might be muted on on this screen.
That's Kristen Scheuer, yeah.
Oh,
Huh, that's interesting. Okay, move on to the next agenda item, and I will email Nancy and find out what's up.
Okay, next we have approval of the 10th grade literature novel.
Hello. I'm going to ask Kristen Shire from the high school English department is going to join us remotely. Kristen, are you there? Hi, Kristen.
Yep.
Perfect. So with Kristen tonight, we are asking for your approval of 2 new novels at the high school to be integrated into their 10th grade English required class. Kristen, if you could just give a brief synopsis highlighting the rationale that the board received late last week.
Okay, sure, no problem. All right, so our focus in adding these 2 new texts to the curriculum is to pair them with the novel To Kill a Mockingbird.
I can't hear.
Our goal is actually, instead of using the typical To Kill a Mockingbird
Kristen,
text,
can you just stop for 1 second? We can't hear you very well, so we're gonna just
oh, sure, no problem.
Thank you. Say that again. Turn hers. Kristen, can you turn your volume up?
Or just get closer to
Sure.
the microphone, maybe.
Okay, my volume's up now.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
I just want you to talk a little bit to see how loud you are.
You want me to talk louder?
Yeah,
No,
talk
we need
loud.
you to talk just a little bit to see how it's coming through. Otherwise, you might have to move closer.
Sure, I can talk.
What's for dinner?
Can you hear me better now?
Not really.
Let me know how long I should talk for. Let me, talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. Should I just do my practice speech right now? So, we're adding To Kill a Mockingbird, the graphic novel, to the text.
What's next on the
Can you
agenda?
still hear me? Should I just go test 1, 2, 3?
I can,
What do you want to,
One,
you want Nicole?
3.
I mean, yeah, and they have the rationale.
All right. Go ahead.
Kathy, any other thoughts? Here.
Your speaker, through your speaker.
Who's-
I don't think it would either.
Yeah.
Try it one more time.
Kristen, you want to try it one more time?
Sure, test 1, 2, 3. Test.
Can
I
you
mean,
hear
I
her
can
at all?
hear her.
Okay,
I
just
can make
quiet.
it out. I can
I
make
can
it
hear
out.
we're gonna
It's
make
fine.
it out, so
It's
go
just
for
quiet.
it.
I
Speak
mean,
louder.
Okay, all right, so I'll go quick. So we are hoping to add 2 new texts to our To Kill a Mockingbird unit. Our focus is, you know, in the past we read the normal To Kill a Mockingbird novel, but we are hoping to pair it with or use the graphic novel version of the text in order to increase engagement with students and accessibility. This will allow us to move through the text a little bit more quickly and pair it with the 2 texts that we're asking you to approve tonight. And the reason behind that is we would like to offer multiple perspectives on the topic of racial injustice in our classroom. And so the texts we are hoping to add are both nonfiction texts. The first one is Mark, and it's about Congressman John Lewis's life and growing up and how he became involved in the civil rights movement. The second text, and it's a graphic novel. So again, that's going to add or increase engagement and accessibility as well in regards to those specific topics. And the second text we're hoping to add is Brown Girl Dreaming, which is a novel written in verse. And it is also a nonfiction text. It is a memoir about Jacqueline Wood's life. And again, it is exploring her experience, living in America. She was born in 1963, and her experiences during the civil rights movement as well. And so again, ultimately the goal is so that we can hear multiple voices in the semester and to increase engagement in the text.
Yes. Thank you, Kristen. So many of you have been here before when we have come to you asking for approval. In previous years, it's been to approve text for our U.S. Lit course, which is in 11th grade. And so now we're looking at expanding some of that book choice and just really looking at diverse perspectives, as Kristen said, getting that now into our 10th grade course and really pairing it with their current To Kill a Mockingbird, and then just adding some layers to it. So we're looking for your approval on that. We would also be happy to provide you with some of those books as well. They haven't been ordered yet, but we'd be happy to provide you with those copies as we have done in years past as well.
And these books would be used in the next school year or during this school year?
We would be using them this school year, correct, Kristen?
Would each student be reading both, or would they choose between the two?
Kristen, would each student be reading both, or would they be choosing?
They would be choosing. Yes, we would be offering the choice between the two.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Could I get a motion to approve these books?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Are we ready for the audit report, or? Okay, should we go on to the next item?
That'd be you.
Yeah, the next
That should probably Sandy.
The next item is the superintendent's evaluation. And all of the school board members, 7 school board members and 12 district administrators were sent a survey to respond to, and everyone who was sent a survey responded, and Superintendent Dittburner also did a self-evaluation. And the questions asked were on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being strongly agree. And there were only 2 questions with a result slightly below 4, which is agree. And then I think this information was out for everybody to see. So, and then on the goals that were for this past year, goal number 1 was concerned the ACT testing, and if there would be a increase in our state average, and those tests were not given due to the COVID shutdown. This goal number 2 is that the 4-year New Prague Senior High School graduation rate will be 96% or higher, and we did achieve 96%. And goal number 3 was that New Prague survey students would feel welcome and respected within their school's learning and environment. And district-wide, 92% of students feel they are welcome and respected. And the breakdown was in high school, 88.3%, middle school was 96.4%, and 5th grade students, 95.3% felt welcome and respected. Goal number 4 was to continue to collaborate and develop positive working relationships with the cities of Elko, Newmarket, Lonsdale, and New Prague, and that was a 4.57 result. And goal number 5 was based on the last survey of parents. There will be increased evidence of parent satisfaction with the majority of the statements, and the result was there was increased satisfaction on 19 statements, decreased satisfaction on 2 statements, and no change on 12 statements. So, and some of the survey comments were Tim models the New Prague way. Tim has a great pulse on the opinions and perceptions of the community, and he's done an outstanding job treading the waters of COVID. He's always very focused and very enthusiastic. And he makes sure that all communities feel included in our district. So it's an excellent evaluation. Thank you. Still waiting for the audit report. Well, next we have memorandums of understanding to
There she is.
approve because of COVID.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I catch you off guard?
Pardon?
Did I catch you off guard?
No, nope, nope.
Okay.
We're just trying to figure out how to get our auditor online. We're having an issue, but anyway, we're working on it. So, I have been working with the SEIU labor units since the summertime. Just meeting with them, talking through some potential issues that relate to the pandemic that really aren't covered in the contract. Contracts typically, or they were not written with a pandemic in mind. I mean, this is a once every 100-year thing, and so some of the contract language we had some issues with. And so I worked with them, and they have felt very good about being involved in the process, and it's been a very positive process overall with the 4 groups. And they do understand that their jobs may be impacted by COVID, and in particular distance learning this year. And so we've worked through, those issues with them. Some of the major issues that we had is we needed some flexibility to be able to temporarily increase and decrease hours without posting or bumping, because of course we have posting requirements, bumping requirements. So we got some flexibility for up to 30 days, which is very helpful. We needed to define and try to streamline the furlough process in case that process has to be used this year. We hope it won't have to be, but it might, we might have to do that. And then we also wanted to talk about how would it work if they worked in other areas? For instance, mainly the custodial area. We're giving employees a chance to get extra hours if they can, and several of them, have been able to work, custodial for us in the evening to help us keep our schools clean. So those are the overall issues that we had to deal with, and then we had some very specific issues by employee group. So the main thing for paraprofessionals is we needed some flexibility in the furlough process as relates to the type of para. We've got several different types of paraprofessionals, and we have some paras that work with specific students in special education and in reading remediation and so forth. And to furlough that, some of those paras and then put other paras in their place really wouldn't do the students very much good, because they don't know the students, they don't know the IEPs and so forth. And so they were able to give us some flexibility, further delineate the groups and how we might furlough paras. They also provided some flexibility for staffing for emergency childcare when we move between the models. If we're in person, we don't need any. If we're in hybrid, we need half. And if we're in distance learning, we need full. So we need to be able to move people, increase hours, decrease hours, and so forth. So that was a challenge to work through. And then transportation had a specific issue about school closures. They have some unique contract language, mainly relating to snow days, where if one school is in session, they get full pay. And it was really put in for snow reasons. So say that, they started picking up the secondary kids, but then they call it off for elementary. They would still get their full pay for that day. It wasn't meant to go for, 2 months or something. So they offered us some flexibility there. And really the gain for them is that if they are exposed at work and have to quarantine, they do not have to use their sick leave. If they can work from home, they're expected to work from home, like paras could maybe work from home. Very difficult for a bus driver or nutrition services person to work from home. But if they, if they can work from home, they must work from home. But if they can't, then we will pay them for their quarantine time if they're exposed through their job at work here. So took a lot of iterations to.
Sandy,
yep.
is there sort of any sort of coverage or reimbursement from CARES when that happens?
Yeah, so, you mean the FFCRA, the Families First,
But the,
basically,
It's the
if
2
they're
week.
required to self-quarantine and have to be paid, is there something that's coming from the federal or state to reimburse?
no, there are some, I mean, they're eligible for up to 14 days through, or for, 2 weeks, through December 30th. If they have to quarantine because of a work situation, they don't even have to use that after tonight because they would get the quarantine time paid. There is a very, very small tax credit that we get, just on the FICA earnings. It's a very small tax credit that we get. But no, we do not get reimbursement for the time we pay them on or if they're quarantining. We do not. You look puzzled.
Well,
Private business gets a tax credit. We don't pay taxes, so we get a very small
right,
piece.
but if it's a state guideline, if it's, something from the MDH or MDE saying that they have to quarantine, then I don't think that should fall under our responsibility for, to
But it,
pay them the
Right,
time.
but
That's what isn't that covered under the,
the FFCRA, but we pay that, and we don't get a reimbursement for that.
but there's also eligible money from the CARES Act too.
You can't use the CRF funds for FFCRA type leaves. There's restrictions on that. Yep. And if they're quarantining due to a personal exposure, they would use their FFCRA, and if there isn't any of that, then they use their sick leave, or they work from home. So yeah, there's a lot of, every time someone gets sick or has to quarantine, there's a whole litany of issues we go through. What are they eligible for? What works best? Yeah, it's a process. We work with each individual employee to determine what's best for them. So there are four separate memorandums to take action on. Like I say, they're all just a tad different. And have any other further questions? If not, I'd ask for approval for those tonight.
You want them all at one time, or do we need to do them
I think, why don't you
separately?
take them separate, just to be safe, yeah. You don't need, it's not a resolution or anything, it's just a yes or no.
So Denny doesn't have to read them, or does he?
No, not a resolution, nope.
Okay, so
So I'll make a motion to accept the memorandum of understanding for the custodial unit.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion on the MOU for the paraprofessionals.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll make a motion for the memorandum of understanding for the food service.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
I'll make a motion to approve the MOU for transportation.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, motion carried. I think they're still working on the audit thing, so now our next item is a district calendar change.
Well, let's get to this, I guess.
I just think it's funny because we just love the calendar.
Yes, well,
Stop it.
you're getting a recommendation tonight, recommending a teacher planning day for next Monday, November 2nd. I'm going to go back in time here and to our last work session. I remember, Matt, you brought it up about what we're doing for our teachers, because we're in this hybrid learning model, which it's a very difficult learning model to do. It's what's best for kids because we're getting them in person part of the time, but for teachers to juggle the two cohorts, you got students in quarantine, you got students that are doing distance learning at the secondary level. You might have a teacher doing all three of those things for students. So it's been very difficult. Since that work session, I have met with principals individually and also as a group, and they're strongly recommending for a short-term solution. When I told them to meet with their staff, their teaching staff, focus wasn't on the problem because we all knew what the problem was, lack of planning and what that entailed, but really to be solution-oriented. We are meeting this Thursday. We got one teacher from each of the schools and then the principals and trying to figure out a long-term plan. But right now, our teachers are overwhelmed, they're stressed out, and we really need to do something and just get a timeout and let them be able to plan. So I'm recommending November 2nd. And then, like I said, we'll have a long-term plan that would create time systematically as we go forward. What I'd like right now, there's two issues that go with it. First of all, I asked one of our principals be here, Nicole Adams with the high school. She's going to explain a better job than me on the challenges of the hybrid learning model. And then Sandy's going to come up and talk about what we're doing for the non-essential groups. I've always said this, any day that we're going to take devote to something like this, we're going to keep everyone employed and paid. I'm not going to have a group take a 20% pay cut, and some districts go on the 5 days, they'll take 1 day and just do planning, distance learning, meetings, that type of thing. But we've got to think of everybody in the district, and we got to treat everyone fairly. So Sandy will talk about the three other groups, but right now I want Nicole to come up and just talk about the challenges what the teachers are facing with this hybrid learning model.
Well, I'd like to start by expressing that the sentiment in the building is by and large, teachers very much want students in the building. There's no question about that. And it was very evident when we began the school year, we were so happy to have kids in the building as they hadn't been there since March 13th. Here we are in week 7, and the weight of the hybrid model is definitely a challenge. I have some teachers that are teaching 3 classes in a day. And when I say 3 classes, they're teaching 5 sections, but potentially 3 separate classes. Some of them are teaching 1 or 2 sections that are entirely distance learning. In their in-person classes, they have their hybrid A group, they have their hybrid B group, and then they also now have students that are in quarantine. And as of this afternoon when I left, we were up to 89 students in quarantine. So they are now essentially trying to serve 4 different groups of students at any given time. The amount of preparation is doubled. The amount of grading is doubled. They are working nights. They are working weekends. They are subbing for each other. When I left this afternoon, tomorrow I'm looking at 13 absences. And so we're doing our very best to cover them. And it's because we have the exclusion guidelines coming into play here. So on top of that, they're again and again rising to the challenge, doing more and more, covering for their colleagues who are teaching from home, but still there needs to be supervision there. And we're getting as creative as we possibly can, but people just need an opportunity to regroup and better prepare. They want to reach out to students that we're not hearing from. They want to connect with them. There just literally is not a minute in the day to do it.
Thanks, Nicole. I think that and then we'll entertain questions in a second, but I want Sandy now to talk about our non-essential employees, what we're doing with them.
Not essential, non-certified. Yeah, non-essential, yeah.
Don't put that in the paper.
So that's good. I know. Yeah, we have some crazy days around here. So we have, several non-certified staff that typically don't have much to do when students start here. But we are, I've worked with Craig, Amy Johnson, Kim Heron, and we have duties for the non-certified staff to do. We have the option right now, we're looking at a couple different things, but we're looking at, it is an unscheduled school closure. Perhaps they could use like their snow day. They could take personal time. They could take unpaid time. They could come to work and work. Some people would be fine not coming to work that day. So try to give them some options. We haven't worked it out totally, but if they want work to do, we will have work for them to do. So they don't miss out on a day of pay, which is a very, a big thing. I've talked to 3 of the groups today, and they all appreciate that very much. And like I said, we're still working through it, but we'll have a communication out to them with what we'll do.
All right, thanks, Sandy. And like I want to emphasize again, this recommendation, this short-term solution is for this Monday, November 2nd, for a teacher planning day. If we did get this approved tonight, an email or letter will be sent home to all families and obviously staff. But we are meeting again later this week. We've got to figure out a way to put, like I said, create time systematically as we go forward here. I think Nicole did a good job explaining, Sandy, what we're doing with the non-certified employees, and just seeing if you have any questions or comments at this time, Chair.
Well, as the mother of 2 teachers who teach in a different district, I can certainly agree that teachers can use a planning day.
And at this point, this is just going to be a one-time event, like
Yeah.
November 2nd?
Just a one-time
you're
event, but
asking
we're
for,
looking at, we got to be careful. We can't, we want our kids in school as much as possible. So as we go forward here, we got to come up with a solution where we don't lose too much student contact time in the schools, but still provide planning. So that will come to you in a November meeting. One, obviously, that I would feel good about and would, again, our top priorities, I mean, it's to ensure high learning for kids, and it's to have a safe learning environment.
Schedule them for snow days.
Yeah, we have those. Anyone else?
I'm totally supported. Our teachers need it after, talking to many teachers, just they're not doing the norm. They're doing over and above, and I hear it from everyone that I'm talking to. I think it's a great idea. I think the idea that we can still bring in our non-certified staff and have them, help out around the different schools is great, because then we're not requiring them to use their time off or their vacation or anything like that. They can still get paid. I totally support this, and I am a little nervous, not about giving them the day, that's not it. I'm a little nervous about what's going to happen at the end of this week, because as we've all seen, it's just going to be one blink of an eye and it's going to all change. And so I think we can use this day also as a, possibly a preliminary if we ever have to go to a distant learning, as a topic.
Yeah,
on Monday.
when we switch learning models, we do have 5 days built in for that, or we get 5 days. And this would not count one of those 5 days on a
This would be
transit.
above that
Yep.
change.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to change Monday, November the 2nd, from a school teaching day to a teacher planning day.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Back.
My steps in just going back and forth here. So we've had some technical difficulties letting Nancy join our Google Meet, but we've got her by phone. And so I'm going to, I've been texting her back and forth here. And okay, Nancy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, can you hear
me?
Nancy?
Yes.
Pretty good? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Nancy. I will, Nancy's from Bergen KDV, our audit firm. This is the 3rd year, Nancy, you've done our audit, or 4th?
I think it's the 4th year already.
4th year, okay. Yeah, we have a great working relationship with them. They're excellent to work with, very professional, thorough, and they're here to give the fiscal year 1920 audit report. Okay, I'm on slide 2, Nancy.
All right, sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me some time to go over the results of our audit. I want to start out tonight by talking about the formal communications that we issue. And on slide 2, we talk about the independent auditor's report. So this is the most important communication that we issue. It is a summary of the work that we perform, and we are issuing an unmodified opinion on your financial statements, which is an indication that everything is fairly stated based on the results of our audit. So it is the best opinion that we can offer as your auditors. Moving on then to slide 3.
Yep,
We have
go ahead.
several other pieces of communication. The first one being a report related to government auditing standards. So because you are a school district in the state of Minnesota, we're required to follow these standards as outlined in statute. And what we're doing is taking a little closer look at your internal control and then also compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, grants, and other matters. And based on the work that we did, we have the one internal control finding. It is the lack of segregation of accounting duties. It is the same finding that you've been receiving with fewer items listed every year. And it is at a middle level. So we have 3 different choices for findings. The first one being a material weakness, which would be pretty significant, the most significant finding. That is not where your finding is. Yours is in that middle level. So does still warrant some attention by you all as the governing board, but is below that material weakness level. We also had a report on our results related to the single audit. So because of the federal funding that you receive, we're required every year to take a look at a program. And based on the work that we did related to that, we're issuing an unmodified opinion on compliance. Again, the best opinion that we can offer, and also no internal control findings related to the controls over that compliance. And then finally, our last official letter is in accordance with Minnesota legal compliance. So the Office of the State Auditor on an annual basis gives us a checklist. They have very specific statutes that they require us to look through and test. And based on the completion of that checklist, we had no findings for fiscal year 20. So all good there. And then there's a bullet point that talks about the communication letter. So that's a separate document, and in there is financial analysis, and we'll go over most of that tonight. There's also some required communication that our standards set for us to put in writing to you as the governing body. And I just want to tell you tonight that nothing strays from our standard language in that area. So read it over, certainly reach out if you have any questions, but very boilerplate language there. And we have one emerging issue, which is related to an upcoming GASB standard that you'll see in a couple of years. And then finally, a legislative summary with the latest from the state of Minnesota. So also some light reading for you, as you will. Moving on then to that financial analysis that I mentioned, starting on slide 4. Because general education aid is your largest funding source, it's important to understand the calculation of that aid, and we start with the general formula allowance. So this is the per pupil amount that you receive. And we have 11 years presented here to kind of give you a perspective of history, and then also what's coming for fiscal 21 that you're operating in right now. And you can see that 2% has been pretty much the standard increase, receiving that for fiscal 20 and then also for fiscal 21. And the other component of the calculation for general education aid has to do with your student count. So we have several slides that take a look at that information, starting with the residents, which you'll find on slide 5. So we have 5-year trends in this document for most of the rest of the information, and we're going to key in on differences between 2019 and 20, but it's kind of nice to see the overall trend as well. So when we look at your residents, which is the top portion of this chart, you can see that those actually decreased just about 5 students for the year. So pretty stable between 2019 and 20. And the line, the very bottom line, the total adjusted ADM, those are the students that you actually serve in your buildings. And that number increased, and that's due to the effects of open enrollment. You have a large gain for open enrollment. So although you have 3896 in residents, you had 4257 in students actually served in the district for the year. And slide 6, similar information, just in a little different format. And you can see that overall in the 5 years, you've had a pretty steady minimal increases each year. So upward trend when we look back to 2016. And then on slide 7, you'll see the weighting factors. So when we actually calculate general education aid, we take those students and weight them by grade level. All of your students receive a 1.0 weighting with the exception of secondary at 1.2. And for the first time, we have consistent weighting factors for all of the 5 years that we're looking at. So on page 8, we have that weighted information. Starting out with your residents, and you can see a small decrease there that we talked about, and then that open enrollment effect. So for fiscal year 20, you had a net gain of 383 students, which is an increase from the previous year with both of the trends going in the right direction. So you had more non-residents coming in and fewer residents going elsewhere. So that number last year, the net gain was 348. So overall, a nice increase there. And if we look all the way back to 2016, that net gain was 300. So you can see how that has been consistently increasing each year, allowing for that overall increase of 31 in the total weighted adjusted student count. And those numbers are again presented on slide 9, separating between the non-residents and the resident students. And that breakout has also been pretty consistent year over year, increasing just slightly each year to make up about 15% of your total population in 2020, that non-resident portion. And then on slide 10, we start to look at the actual dollar amount. So starting with the revenues and the sources in the general fund. So overall, you had about a 1.5% increase, which equates to about $667,000. And the largest contributor to that increase is those state sources. That category increased by about $895,000. So we've talked about the increase in the formula allowance, so that 2% is part of that increase. The increase in the students served, also part of that. And then special ed entitlement increased just a little bit of some tweaks to the formula for 2020, and then also increasing needs each year in that category. The other two components or sources were pretty consistent with the previous year amount. And we have a pie chart on page 11, also with your sources of revenue, and you can see highlighted here that reliance of the state sources on your funding, making up 84% of the total. So really pretty minimal, the other sources of revenue in the general fund. And then on page 12, a little different perspective on those revenues, taking a look at budget to actual. So when we look at totals for the general fund, your revenues were under budget by about 0.3%. So almost spot on with the total. So that makes for good planning, good availability of knowing what you can spend when your revenue budget is that close. And other revenues was the largest category that was under budget, and that had a lot to do with student activities. So those are in the general fund for the first time in 2020, and with closing of schools in March, you had a full quarter without much activity in that area. So those revenues were less than anticipated. And then one last chart on the revenues on page 13 or slide 13. And here we have revenues per student by major source in the general fund, and then also some comparisons through 2019 with other districts of your size, and then overall statewide average. So for New Prague, if we look at 2019 versus 20, you can see you have pretty minimal increase, about $110 per student served. And that just has to do with the increases that we've already talked about in the students and their revenues overall. And again, that state aid being the biggest contributor to that increase. Below that, the middle and the bottom of the page show the districts of similar size and overall statewide averages. And you can see consistently you have been below both of those. You know, a little bit closer to districts of a similar size, but still pretty significantly below those statewide averages. Biggest contributors to that, although each category is below, property taxes and state aid being the largest variances. Switching gears then on slide 14 to the expenditures in the general fund. Overall, those increased a little bit more than the revenues, just under 5% or about $2.1 million. And primarily that came in the way of additional salaries and benefits with those cost of living increases and steps and lane changes for your instructors. And when we look at the pie chart, if we had 2019 here, it would be very, very similar to 2020. And the direct instructional categories, special education, vocational, and regular instruction, make up about 67% of the total. So by far your largest spending categories. Budget to actual is presented on slide 15. So general fund expenditures were under budget, just under $1.8 million, which is about a 3.7% variance. Three categories contributing to most of that difference. First of all, regular instruction, under budget due to conservative budgeting for salaries and benefits, and then also that student activity that we talked about on the revenue side is present also on the expenditure side. So fewer activities going on in the spring of the year contributing to that. And then in instructional support services and sites, buildings, and equipment, those are the other two categories with variances. A lot of that had to do with projects that weren't completed in 2020 that had been included in the budget. And then also for sites and buildings, some open custodial positions during the year. And then slide 16 is going to give us one last look at the expenditures and similar to the revenues on a per student basis. So overall, an increase, a $571 increase for the general fund, just with those increases in expenditures. And again, similar to the revenues, because you can't spend what you don't receive, expenditures per student below both districts of a similar size and overall statewide averages. Now, slide 17 is going to give us a very high level look at the general fund. For the last 5 years, taking a look at revenues, expenditures, and then the changes. Each of the years that we're looking at here, you did have excess expenditures in the fund, with 2020 being no exception. So you had excess expenditures of $1.5 million, with that increase in expenditures outpacing the increase in revenues. Below that, you'll see a $403,000 other financing source. So there are a few things in there. First of all, you had a capital lease that was issued during the year, pretty significant insurance recoveries. And then different in there this year is the inclusion of the student activities and some scholarships into the general fund. About $130,000 relates to that. And then offsetting those sources, you did have another use with a transfer to the food service fund and the community service fund. And we'll see that when we look at those two funds in a little bit forward. So overall, your fund balance did decrease by about $1.1 million from the previous year. If we look to the components of the fund balance, which is the bottom portion of this chart there, you'll see a couple of new items, scholarships and student activities. So those relate to the additions to the general fund. Student activities now under board control. And the scholarships included here had been in the trust fund, but do have some administrative involvement, so they've been moved into the general fund. You'll see a pretty significant decrease in the restrictions in the long-term facility maintenance category, and that just had to do with spending of that fund balance that had been accumulated in the previous year. If we look two numbers up from the bottom, you'll see your unassigned fund balance. So this is what you have that hasn't been earmarked or restricted for other spending. It's what you have for the future. Decreased just about $169,000, so pretty consistent with 2019 numbers, but did decrease overall. And we have one last chart on the general fund on slide 18. And this chart takes a look at your unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of unrestricted expenditures. And we use that because we can compare you to statewide averages related to that. So it's a little different than your unassigned number because it includes the committed fund balance, and then it also excludes any restricted expenditures. So you can see it did decrease for 2020 from 21% down to 19.5%. And has been consistently decreasing since 2016. The statewide average has hovered right around that 20% for the last 4 years, and probably will be pretty close to that again for fiscal 20, maybe a little bit higher. So pretty close to statewide averages when we look at this unrestricted fund balance percentage. And then the last couple of slides take a look at your special revenue funds, starting with your food service fund. And I think the theme for both of these is going to be COVID-19. So you had decreases in revenues and expenditures in this fund related to the change with the closing of your school buildings. So you had excess expenditures. You also had a transfer from the general fund to make sure this fund maintains And in the end, your fund balance did increase to just over $512,000 at the end of the year. And then finally on slide 20 is the Community Service Fund. Again here, pretty significant decrease in revenues just with the closing of the buildings and the aquatic center and things like that. So you did have excess expenditures in this fund too, just under $500,000. A transfer in from the general fund to help things out, but overall fund balance did decrease by $191,000. When we look to the bottom portion of the chart, though, you can see that most of the fund balances are still positive at year end, with the exception of community education, which has consistently been in a deficit since 2017. So just recommend that you keep an eye on those programs. I know this year is again tough with the restrictions that we're all still under. So it's a little bit of a tough time to make sure that things are covering costs. All right, and that is the information I have, and I'm certainly happy to take any questions.
Nancy's not able to hear you, so if you have a question, let me know and I'll repeat it to her. Questions? Okay, no questions, Nancy. Thank you very much. Sorry for the technical glitches that we had, and I'm glad we were able to get this accomplished tonight.
Yeah, I am too. And thanks for working with me on that. And before I go, I want to say thank you to Sandy, to you, and to your team for being very well prepared for the audits. Even in this virtual world that we're working in, things went very smoothly. So thank you.
Yeah, this year was a challenge. I must admit, it was a challenge this year.
Yes.
But yeah, we have a great team here, and they have a great team as well. So we muddled through it. So
yeah, and we appreciate all your extra efforts.
yeah, good. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
And the last item is superintendent's report.
All right, well, I'm used to going first, and I'm going last here, so don't.
You need
I'm
to
sorry.
take action to accept the audit report, please.
I'll make a motion to accept the audit report.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
All right, now can I go? All right. Well, I just want to first of all echo what Kelly said earlier, and then Nancy, with the finances, the work that Sandy does there, that's why we're in as great a shape as we are. All the detail with her and her staff, but her leadership is very important. And it's been a very busy year because it's not just the finance, it's all the HR issues too that have been going up. It's been crazy. So thank her for everything that she's done. Just an update, obviously homecoming was last weekend, one of the most unusual homecoming weeks probably, with Powder Puff being split up into 2 games. They had dress-up days. They had an outdoor coordination on Friday afternoon. I think it was about 30 degrees. It was freezing. And then football game lost a heartbreaker right at the end. But all in all, it was probably the best that could have been done. And I know some districts just canceled them, but I'm glad we stayed on. And thank Nicole and her staff for doing a great job with that. I appreciate that. What I want to do, I mean, it's the year of COVID, so I need to give you an update and sort of my take on things right now, as we are right now on Monday, October 26th, and as we move forward. Right now, positive COVID cases, I think this should be known. I'm not going to get specific into the buildings. Got to be very careful because we don't have a lot of cases and we don't have a lot of kids in the building, so we got to protect that. But we have students that have had positive COVID cases. It's 10 in the entire district now for, heading into the 8th week. 10 students total. And then 5 classroom teachers. And I say classroom because I'm going to talk a little bit on substitute coverage. That's been very important. We have a couple more that, and then a couple other staff members too, but classroom teachers. I do want to say there has not been a documented transition from student to student, student to teacher, teacher to student, and teacher to teacher in any of our buildings. It confirms the studies I've read that I don't believe schools are spreaders. They're not spreaders. The second thing I'm going to talk about are exclusionary guidelines from the Minnesota Department of Health. They are our, like Nicole said earlier, our greatest challenge. When you have one COVID-related issue and the whole sports team is out for 14 days. We had a volleyball match, was it 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago? A B squad volleyball player from another school had COVID when we played him. We did not get a call until 7 days later. We were informed by the Minnesota Department of Health then our players had to be out for the next 7 days. So just some crazy things like that, but they are challenges. Like Nicole was saying too, with coverage, and especially hitting a little bit at the high school now. Not so much the number of cases, but the number of exclusionary cases. I had 90 students, she had 89, but trust her, it's probably 89. But 89 students are in quarantine right now. Obviously, we have a couple sports teams and a couple other things going on, and that makes it a challenge, going back to the hybrid model. We've got 11 classroom teachers right now in quarantine for 14 days. And
We've had 10 positive cases for students
10 total.
and 10 times that in quarantine.
Well, that's in quarantine right now, but there's been others in quarantine earlier, but basically, yes.
Something needs to be done about that.
Well, yeah, kids are missing school. 11 classroom teachers, I told you, for 14. And the challenge is right now at the high school is, and we are doing our best to find substitute teachers. I can't praise the district office here. Sandy's got her team going over and covering classes. We had her accounts payable person, Fayette at Eagleview today. And Falcon. We've got, Maren was in the classroom for a week. 2 weeks, she was in the classroom. Tony's been in the classroom. I volunteered, but no one will take me. It's everyone we can get to fill in for class. Now, the teachers have been awesome because the ones that do can teach that are not infected and really sick, they've been contract tracing to put into exclusion, but they've been teaching from home. And they've been phenomenal. So that's where we are with that. But right now, currently, yeah, we've got 11 classroom teachers. Like I want to mention that in the class, there are other teachers, whether counselors or, just other people too that are in quarantine, not just in the classroom. And same with a few paraprofessionals. But of those teachers, 4 because of a sports team, and 7. And you got to remember, when they go into quarantine, it's not always because of in our school with their staff. Most of them are because they have a family infection, whether a son, daughter, or husband. So yeah, it's been crazy. In quarantine right now with our staff, 6 are high school and 5 are elementary. Middle school, actually, nothing right now. People ask me, in fact, I got an email this morning from a mother. She's got 2 young daughters at an elementary school of when we're going back in person. And I said, and she told me in her email how important it is that kids learn from being in person with play and just interaction, everything, which I totally agree. And I told her that. Appreciate the feedback, but I said, I'll call you later because I can't explain everything on an email. So I did call her actually right before this school board meeting and talked about her decision-making process. What are we about? We're looking at things every single day. Evaluations are made every day. Not every week, every day, because things change so quickly, and we've got to be ready for that. I mean, we'll say one thing, we're saying, oh, that's going great at one school, and all of a sudden, 2 days later, it all gets crazy. We also meet weekly with county health officials, with all 3 counties. People forget, we represent 3 counties. But when we make a decision, The one that everyone thinks we totally go by, and we don't, but we take that into consideration, is the county rate per 10,000 people. Scott County, LeSueur County, Rice County. And I'll tell you right now, they're all going up. All right? Does that mean we're changing learning models? No, it doesn't, because that isn't the only criteria we look at. We also look, the second thing is zip code data. For example, I could give you an example. It could be really high in Shakopee and Prior Lake, but not many cases in the New Prague area or Elko Newmark area. So you got to be careful about that. Probably the most important data we have is our building data. All right? Our building data is our most important data. And I know Jen told me today, she said, just keep in mind the county health officials do as we going into the winter, if there's a big outbreak, we'd have to transition a learning model. And then what they do is they combine COVID with influenza. So add a building, and remember, we can go by buildings. It doesn't have to be the entire district, the 5% rule. If 5% of the population is at home with influenza and COVID, all right, we'd have to shift immediately to a distance learning model. Now keep in mind let's just take Eagle View School, for example. There's 600 students there, so that would mean 30 students. And obviously right now, any of our buildings, we're not anywhere close to it. At the high school, if we have 1,200 students, it would be 60 students that would be out there that we'd take a look at. But we take a look at all those three of those things. As Nicole said earlier, we want to be in school, our teachers want to be in school. But what you approved tonight, with allowing this planning time is going to help us because it's wearing them down, and we want to stay in the hybrid. We'd love to be in person. So when I called the mom, I said, what was crazy is 3 weeks ago, we were talking about elementary possibly going in person, and all of a sudden, county data went up, zip code data went up, and the building data went up. Not by a lot, the building. We don't have, like I said, that many infections, but the exclusion thing is big. Is where it's at. But bottom line, the final thing on the decision-making process is doing the right thing. Do what's right. We want as safe a school environment as possible. I can guarantee you there is not spreading, not documented yet, in the buildings. And probably part of it is in the hybrid model, we don't have as many people, and the kids have been great about keeping their masks on and keeping social distancing. So all that helps. The schedule going 2A, all right, and then 3B or 3A and 2B, sometimes we've had infections by students that happened when they were off. They were not in school for 2 or 3 days. So Jen Schenecker, our health service director, has said many times, I think it's happened, 3 times now, or 4 times, that there was no contact made with any other students because they were on their off days. So I'm glad we didn't go every other day because there's more likelihood that we would have more cases. But the bottom thing is, should you be scared? Do you think we should go to another model if it's easier? No. What we have to do is what's best for students and to get them in school. And if the best we can do right now is a hybrid, we're going to stick to it as best we can. But again, if the numbers, especially in our building, are going up, county, but I'm not going up. I'm not going to agree with all the Scott County schools if it does go above 30 for high school, automatically that we go. We're still going to look at our zip code, and we're still going to look at our building. But I'll go back to what I said earlier. Our greatest challenge is getting coverage for not people that are it's not because of COVID infections, it's because the exclusionary rule is our biggest challenge. And it actually is better starting this week, knock on wood here, than it was last week. Last week was crazy, but we're taking time out of administrators. We, talk about stress out. It's part of the job, but the amount of work that Jen Schenecker, Marin's here tonight, Nicole and the other principals and other administrators and Sandy have spent on the weekend, Tony Boothie. We've had, a couple outbreaks where we've had meetings on Sunday, but it's just part of the deal now. I don't know what the future holds. I don't want to spend time predicting because it's not going to do any good to predict. But I will say this, I do hope for the best. But I'm talking about this tonight to tell you that we're on top of things and we'll do what's best for kids. Remember the last thing. It's what's best for kids. We want a safe learning environment, but we want kids in school because that's where they're going to learn best if we can. But if we can't do it, we're going to have to shift the learning model. But right now, I think it's going to really help on this short-term plan on Monday to have these teachers alone just working and also have that long-term plan that we can put systematic time in for our teachers because it'll make all the difference in the world. Okay? Anyone have any questions?
Are teachers and students who are quarantined at home, are the students able to do online learning?
Oh, yes.
And the teachers are able to teach?
Yeah, we've had, I think, only one teacher now. Okay, you got to remember, most are in quarantine are because of close contact situations. Okay, so they're not sick. So if they're not sick, if you're not sick, can you teach from home? And so they're teaching from home, doing an amazing job. I think we've only had one teacher because of being sick from COVID has not been able to teach from home, I believe. Is that right? Probably right. So, yeah, so the teaching goes on. They're just, like I went in a room, Marin, where she was for 2 weeks. She was out at Eagle View. You had the tablet up on the whiteboard of the teacher. She's right there teaching. The kids are right there listening, following. It was just like that, and she's in the back helping move the screens around. And actually, it's worked very well. I can't tell you how well the teachers have done with that. So that's the positive of it. On the other side, probably a greater challenge is when the students are not there. Obviously, Tammy, it's just tough when they're not there in quarantine and to be able to plan for that and work with those kids too, because like Nicole said, teachers got the 2 cohorts. They might have distance learning too, and now they're getting quarantined too. So it's tough. Not to mention the preps. You got teachers that have 3 preps.
Tim, when you've been talking with the health officials regarding like the exclusionary rule, is there things as we as community, as citizens of Minnesota can do to help, like try to push, not necessarily push back on that rule, but I think not being able to provide like a negative test, is there any talk happening right now that can get us back into class earlier?
I've talked to a few superintendents. I mean, to change things, it's got to come from parents and also, superintendents and school board actually. And it's at the state level. Mm-hmm. At the state level. We have very strict, obviously you know this, we have very strict rules. My niece in Arizona is a teacher, and I don't want to go that way because they're way too far the other way. They had a student test positive in her classroom, and they just say, you got to go get tested, but you keep teaching. Okay, there's no exclusionary. If it's positive, then you're out. But until then, and of course, in Arizona, they don't get the results for 4, 5, 6 days. So it's really interesting. I don't want that, but yeah, ours is tough. Well, I will tell you. Let me just tell you this: with the Minnesota State High School League, I'll be honest. When they should have started all fall sports on time, when the cases were low. So what happens? We had football and volleyball when the cases are starting to go up. It doesn't make any. So why did that happen? Because the parents got to the high school league, and the high school league's not going to do anything without the blessing of the state, the governor. Does it make sense? I don't know. I'm just happy, though, that the kids in football and volleyball are getting a chance, but it makes it more difficult. You're going to have more. That's why there's so many football teams scrambling now, because it just takes, one case, one infection, staff member or player to put it down. So I think, like I said, it's a state thing, and I think they listen more to parents than anyone else.
Greater legislators.
Any other questions? I hope I didn't sound like I'm on my soapbox. I'm just giving you, not a soapbox really, but just where we're at with it.
Again, from the public health people, because you talk to these people on a regular basis, has there been any talk about adjusting the criteria, like the per 10,000? Because that date, that was put together in July, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've learned a lot since July. I mean, you said yourself, since then, we haven't had the whole mass infestation of people, of kids being next to each other, because obviously if that was the case, all these kids would have, you know, COVID-19 right now. And I'm not trying to sound like this is something crazy, but I'm just saying, are we looking at this, I mean,
You know,
are they looking at these things?
I would have to talk to Jen Schenecker and get her take on it, our health service director, but we have that weekly call with each of our counties, and the gal from LeSueur County, Vanessa Lusky, is unbelievably good. And she would have that answer. I guess I'd have to ask her, because she really is very knowledgeable and has been very helpful so I couldn't really answer that question right now.
And the exclusionary rules come from where?
The state,
High school league or the?
no, the State Department of Health, Minnesota State Department of Health.
And they don't answer to anybody.
Well, the governor probably, but, yeah, I don't know. Like I told you at the last meeting, some of the rules are set up that they almost don't want you to have activities, or they want to make sure you go into distance learning. It's just very difficult, and I mean, we have to follow the rules. Simply bit. And I will say, I talk about the teachers, our kids, like when I tell you, when I go to the high school, there isn't one kid that doesn't have the mask on. And, you know, they don't have the locker bag. They follow I think they do a great job. They adjust better than the adults do. We as adults, they're amazing, I think. Incredible.
I've had one kid tell me that.
Yeah, exactly true. They will be, if we have to go to distance learning, they will be absolutely crushed. That is so true. So that's why, again, I can't emphasize it enough, being able to help the teachers out so we can be successful, you know, so they can have success in the hybrid learning model. Otherwise, it becomes so sacrificed that it's just not good, well, mentally, but it's really sacrificing teaching too. Anything else? Well, this is the longest meeting in my 8 years, I think, here, so. Leo, I know you're happy about that. Anyone else?
That it's your longest.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a
Make a motion
motion.
to adjourn.
Okay, second.
Second.